One summer while attending the Royal College of Art in London, second-year graphic design student Ridley Scott managed to commandeer a spare Bolex from his university storage closet. With his newly acquired 16mm camera in hand, Ridley headed up north to his hometown of West Hartlepool, with one clear ambition in mind. As Scott specifically recalls, quote, "to fundamentally disrupt and ruin my brother's summer holiday," end quote.
Yeah, and I ruined his summer. I ruined his summer. We shot that for 6 weeks with him as the actor and chief equipment carrier.
His younger brother, who plays a starring role in the short film that Ridley shot that summer, plainly titled Boy and Bicycle, was of course legendary action director Tony Scott. This tiny but impressively composed summer project was the very first completed film by cinematic giant Ridley Scott. Scott, a filmmaker who is now approaching his 60th year of actively working in the film industry, is single-handedly responsible for conceiving and actualizing a significant number of modern cinema's most iconic, enduring, and influential creations himself. The ultra-seasoned director has a laundry list of indelible genre classics to his name, and a phone book-sized resume of masterful work that spans the many decades of his distinguished directorial career. From Alien, to Blade Runner, to Thelma and Louise, to Gladiator, to The Martian, Scott's 50-plus year run of exceptional cinematic storytelling is staggering to consider when viewed in its totality. Scott's essential core as a filmmaker comes from a robust mixture of a dogged workman-like dedication to the physical, blue-collar ethos of practical filmmaking, and an exceptionally skillful brand of fine artistry that manifests itself in his notoriously exhaustive storyboarding process, as well as all of the elite production design that permeates his entire filmography. Having just wrapped principal photography on his upcoming Joaquin Phoenix-led historical biopic of Napoleon, and now currently gearing up to helm his long-anticipated sequel to the Russell Crowe sword and sandal classic Gladiator, the 85-year-old Scott is showing absolutely no signs of slowing down.
Wake up! Time to die.
Scott has introduced so many original visual elements to the modern movie lexicon that it's easy to lose track of them all. His outsized impact on the overall visual language of sci-fi, fantasy, and action movies and pop culture is no coincidence. Scott spent years at the Royal College of Art, mastering and developing the finer elements of design, and honing his ability to internally visualize a landscape, illustrate it in precise detail, and render his designs as pieces of set creation in a physical space for the camera to photograph cinematically. Not only did Scott spend years in art school developing his facility as a visual artist, but after graduation, he was immediately hired as an in-demand production designer for a number of weekly televised programs on the BBC.
Dick Levin said, "You got to come back now, I'm going to give it away." So I went back to BBC for 3 years as a designer.
At 27, after years of working a relentless schedule as a production designer, Scott shifted his focus full-time to directing television advertisements after he realized that directing a single 30-second ad for Gerber baby food paid more than a month's salary at the BBC.
We then, years of television advertising.
So Scott started his own commercial production company, Ridley Scott Associates, which he and his family still own and operate to this day. Ridley shot countless commercials of all sizes. This consistent shooting schedule allowed him to encounter and conquer every conceivable issue or obstacle that could possibly arise on a film set. He has emphatically maintained that this period was his true film school, and still credits it as being the most vital era in his development as a director, and a problem solver on set.
But it was my film school because it teaches you about everything.
Obviously, Alien and Blade Runner are two of Scott's most revered and influential works. Both films burst onto movie screens worldwide and ignited the imagination of the greater movie-going consciousness like a thunderbolt in the night sky.
I'm right here, but you've got to shoot straight.
With the exception of Kubrick's 2001 A Space Odyssey, audiences had simply never seen a sci-fi world as textured, tactile, and convincing as, say, the interior hub of the USCSS Nostromo spaceship from Alien, or the twinkling, fogged-out, Baroque metallic skyline of futuristic Los Angeles in Blade Runner. The only reason the term cyberpunk is a widely recognized aesthetic is because Scott crystallized and invented so much of the genre's visual shorthand with his design of Blade Runner.
You better get it up. I'm gonna have to kill you.
Every invented detail that appears on screen in both these films was carefully considered and meticulously crafted by hundreds of skilled craftspeople. All of these new cinematic languages and identifiable aesthetic markers that Scott was conjuring on screen have gone on to inspire endless imitators and serve as the basis for generations of genre filmmaking to this day.
He has an angel at home to watch over his breeches, and off he goes paying a call on Madame de Lyon.
Since his debut film, the criminally underseen Napoleon-era historical drama The Duelist, Scott's compositional and narrative tastes as a filmmaker have always run on the grandiose side. When discussing his script selection process, Scott says,
It can be just a straight action adventure, but it's always better if it's character-driven. So I'm nearly always looking for very strong characters.
The Duelist, Gladiator, and most recently The Last Duel are all attempts to stage emotionally dynamic chamber plays that center around a handful of diametrically opposed characters. Scott's unique gift as a filmmaker is his ability to conceive, configure, and execute the drama of these plots on the grandest, most ornate stage imaginable. Even when Scott isn't in his rarest form of artistic integrity, his movies still pull off world-class levels of visual composition and technical wizardry.
Are you not entertained?
1492, Conquest of Paradise is a long-winded and arguably problematic piece of revisionist history, but it is simply impossible to gripe with the film's sheer level of commitment to actually recreating the conditions of the unconquered Americas, with judicious attention to detail in camera and on set.
When this wall comes down, there will be no quarter.
The same is true of Scott's bloated but stunningly constructed Crusades-era epic Kingdom of Heaven. Even if the melodramatic plot and broad archetypal characterizations of the story leave something to be desired, there is always another David Lean-esque extreme wide shot that encompasses the teeming masses of the Ayyubid Holy Army, or a tracking shot through the smoke-filled courtyard of a bustling Jerusalem bazaar to gawk at in a dazed amazement. The larger point being that regardless of their individual merits as works of art, one simply will not find any Ridley Scott movie that altogether lacks his signature bravura style of epic filmmaking chops.
Here's your pen, bro.
No other living filmmaker, save perhaps Maestro Martin Scorsese, has epitomized the idea of keep on keeping on quite like Ridley Scott has.
You got to stay hungry and keep bouncing the ball. That's me.
The monumental contributions that he has made to the medium are even more impressive when considering the prolific output and the breakneck speed at which Scott has been turning out classics for the last half a century. Respected for his sheer longevity of excellence and his level-headed, no-nonsense demeanor, Scott noticeably commands the attention, respect, and the genuine curiosity of a tableful of other master filmmakers in his 2016 THR Directors Roundtable appearance.
Turned to me and said, "That was really boring," when I said, "That's really boring, dude."
He is one of the few remaining filmmakers who can make commercially accessible, big-budget tentpole productions that dazzle audiences with unassailable action set pieces and larger-than-life drama, and simultaneously tell stories that interrogate the biggest, wealthiest themes in all of human existence. If you were looking for a condensed moment of pure audiovisual beauty and a haunting evocation of existential melancholy, fire up Roy Batty's iconic speech from the end of Blade Runner.
I've seen things you people wouldn't believe.
Only one filmmaker in history could have composed this perfect cinematic poem, and thankfully, he's still with us.